This year's G7 summit in Canada is being dominated by divisions. Not only is there resentment over America's new trade tariffs, but Donald Trump's sowed further discord by suggesting Russia should be reinstated to the group. The proposal has split the allies, though they've agreed to keep it off the agenda for this year.
Here we all agreed that a return of Russia to the G7 format summits can't happen until substantial progress has been made in connection with the problems with Ukraine.
Canada's position is absolutely clear that there are no grounds whatsoever for bringing Russia with its current behavior back into the G7.
Before any such conversations can take place, Russia needs to change its approach.
The G7, which used to be the G8, they threw Russia out. They should let Russia come back in.
As for the presence of Russia in the G8, we will see. For sure, Italy was traditionally a supporter of the Russian presence in the G8.
The divisions were already on display before the summit. Global leaders joined together to denounce Trump's tariffs on steel and aluminium imports from Canada and the European Union. They vowed retaliation, with the EU raising the matter at the World Trade Organization. But despite the tension, Trump joked with the Canadian Prime Minister about the issue.
Justin has agreed to cut all tariffs and all trade barriers between Canada and the United States.
Trump was referring to $16 billion worth of retaliatory tariffs by Canada. And despite the light tone, the Canadian Foreign Minister reaffirmed the country's position against U.S. tariffs. Samira Khan now takes a closer look at the divisions at the G7.
Over the past couple of days, the world has witnessed increasingly tough talk from the American president, who's clearly set on forcing Canada and the Europeans to accept his administration's stance on trade.
All of these countries have been taking advantage of the United States on trade. We have to straighten it out.
He's launched stern challenges to his counterparts on Twitter, which, needless to say, hasn't been well received in diplomatic circles. Trump has abandoned the traditional etiquette of not openly criticizing other attendees, even attacking the host of the summit, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, as well as French President Emmanuel Macron.
Prime Minister Trudeau is being so indignant, bringing up the relationship that the U.S. and Canada had over the many years and all sorts of other things. But he doesn't bring up the fact that they charge us up to 300% on dairy, hurting our farmers, killing our agriculture.
It doesn't stop there. It's emerged that no meeting with British Prime Minister Theresa May will take place, even though such a one-to-one on the sidelines would normally be customary. To top it off, the White House announced Trump would cut his visit a day short to arrive early in Singapore for his meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, showing a certain lack of respect for the G7 itself. A far cry from Obama's experience at meetings in the past few years, a virtual love fest for all concerned. But France's Macron said the show would go on despite Trump's unorthodox behavior.
Maybe the American president doesn't mind being isolated today, but we also don't mind being six if need be.
So with so much uncertainty emerging from the clash of opposing views in Quebec, the outcome of the meeting is very much up in the air.
The personal relationship between European leaders and the US president is bad. And there are no ideas, because of the subjects we are talking about, that these relations will be better. We have not only trouble with the tariffs, we have trouble on almost every subject, and I think the rift between Brussels and Washington, the European Union and the United States, will become bigger and bigger.
Amid the divisions, the summit has been accused of becoming increasingly irrelevant to the New World Order. Last year's meeting described itself as a gathering of the world's most important industrially advanced democracies. This year, that was changed to 7 of the world's advanced economies. Now, the economic world order has changed since the summit first gathered in 1975. The G7's share of GDP has seen a steady decline since the 1980s. In fact, it's plummeted from 50% to just over 30%. And some of the world's largest economies, including China, India and Russia, are not represented. Jeffrey Tucker, the executive editor at Laissez-Faire Books, thinks that the G7 is actually losing its relevance.
especially not one that's just the G7, which excludes China and Russia, as Trump himself put it out. It doesn't even constitute, if you believe these figures, not even half of the world GDP. It's no longer a relevant body, even in the sense that they believe. There's a more fundamental problem here. The world economy is increasingly decentralized and integrated in a way that eludes control by anybody, any G, whether it's G7, G8, G20, G200. The big topic of discussion is Trump's crazy trade war stuff and his demand for national production and punishing other countries and starting and disrupting trade routes and raising prices. This is all very dangerous behavior. And to the extent that something like the G7 could contain that problem, it's really hard to know whether or not in the future these kind of governing bodies are going to have much relevance to the way the world economy works.